Hi everyone, welcome to the first Excel Reddit video where I'm going to be going through Excel subreddit and I'm going to be solving some problems and see if I can give everyone some tips maybe on how to fix things in the future. If you like this video, make sure you subscribe, and if you want me to solve any specific problems in the future, just drop me a comment and I'll get to it in a later video. Thanks. Okay, so let's get cracking. So this first one is a VLOOKUP problem where they want to check if a cell contains the word exterior. So they need to check in column C, and they want the output to be in G5. And then, yeah, so if it finds the word exterior, but not an exact match, because I'm assuming there might be more than one word, then it will run the VLOOKUP. Otherwise, it does not provide an output. So let's have a look at the file. So here it looks like we have a basic VLOOKUP already set up, where we're looking up the value in F5, and we're going to be looking up column H, and then returning the pipe size is found in column I. And so yeah, basically this will work for all cases here, but they want it to be only for exterior. So if I change this to interior, it's still going to work, which is what they don't want. So what we need to do is add an extra section to this to check for the word exterior. So what we're going to do is we're going to add an if statement at the start, and then we're going to need to add the check now. So the way to do that would probably be a count if, and then we're going to check this cell. And the way to check for a partial text match, which is what this is, because there's multiple options that contain exterior and there's other words in here as well. So we don't want to check if the whole thing matches exterior, because that's just not going to work. So the way to do that is to, in your quotation marks, if you add a asterisk, that's seen as like a wildcard. So it can be in any part of the text, and it will return as a count. So then that will just return 0 if it's not in there, and if it's in there, it will return a number. And then the value, if true, will be the lookup. Otherwise, it will be, let's just add a NA. And that's that. One thing I noticed as well, which we can do something to improve this a little bit better. In this section here, it's checking for the square foot value, and then timesing it by this value as well, which is also a lookup. But then in here, we're doing a lookup on E6 in this table. However, these are seen as ranges. So if it doesn't exactly match, which a lot of cases it's probably not going to, so in here, in this case, it's 10, which doesn't match, but it will fit into this section. So we need to maybe tweak that slightly just to make sure that it works for all cases, and you don't have to like manually work out what they need to be. Okay, so there's going to be a couple parts to this problem. So first of all, we need to check if this value, we need to find the closest one. So basically, if it's less than anything in here, then we need that one. So the first one that returns true. So for example, here, if it's 10, then the maximum would be 300. Obviously, it could be fit in any of these, but the closest one is the 300. So we're probably going to use index match for this. I'm going to break it into a couple stages so it's a bit easier to understand and easier to work out. So we're going to start with a match, which it basically returns the row number based on some sort of criteria. So let's just return true, because the thing we're looking up, we need to match it, and the response of that will be true. So then what we're going to check is the value in this column here. And then we're going to say if it's greater than or equal to the value we find here, which we could just keep as D5 because it's in the same sheet. And then the match will have to be exact. So then that will return 1, which is correct. That's the first row in that column. So if we were to change this to 200 or something, that's too small. Let's just do 500. It looks like that's still returning 1, which is not correct. And I've noticed here that we are referencing the wrong point. So we actually need to reference this. So now it returns 2 because it's greater than 300, but it's still less than 700. So the closest one will be this one. So it returns 2. So now we have the row number. We need to extend this a little bit further because we actually want the corresponding result in here. So to extend this, we now need the index, which will help us return the value found at a specific column and row reference. So the column reference will be the pipe size. And then the row number is what we used a second ago, which will be the result of the match. And then we don't need to worry about column number because there's literally just one column in the reference that we added. And then that should respond with the result. So now if this changes, it automatically changes it. I mean, they're the same. So if let's test it with the extreme, and then so 2200, which would match here, returns a pipe size of 1. So another thing here, this is looking at G, but we actually want to check or return H in this part because this is the size and this is the pipe size. The pipe size is based on that size. So let's just change this to H instead, because this is our result. Now it returns the size, and then the pipe size formula that we created also works as well. So on to the next one. Okay, so this looks like it's a conditional formatting problem. So they're setting up a simple accounting sheet where on each row they're entering the total amount of a purchase order, and then they're going to be adding the amount they invoiced each week, which is the sum of the invoices, or sorry, the amount minus the sum of the invoices, and that's the remaining amount. And then they want to conditionally format the rows when the remaining hits 0. So they haven't given us a spreadsheet to work off here, so I'm just going to quickly make that. Okay, so this is my mock-up. If you're from the UK, this is like a Art Attack. This one I made before. You might not get that reference if you're younger than 30. But yeah, so anyway, here we are, and we've got the remaining amounts based on the previous week's invoices. And what we're going to want to do is highlight the rows that contain a value here, which is 0, basically. Maybe we can even do less than or equal to 0, depending if the people have been paying or not. So what we're going to do is conditional formatting, and we'll just create a new rule. Then within this, we're going to do a cell based on cells that contain, and we'll do cell value, and then we'll do a less than or equal to 0, and then we'll make that some kind of green. Great, and then we're going to want to copy that. Well, let's edit this to make sure that it's applied to everything. So we'll copy it, highlight, and then if you pay special, you can do conditional formatting. So as you can see here, and I did it like this on purpose, is you can only see how it's been applied to one cell, but they actually wanted the row to be highlighted because it's a little bit more obvious, I suppose. So the basic conditional formatting rule won't work. So what we're going to actually do instead is we're going to edit this. We're actually going to use a formula instead. Okay, so now what we're going to do in here is we're going to say equals this value is less than or equal to 0, and then we'll press OK. And then instead of just the column being in the applied range, what we're actually going to do is we're going to select the entire range and then press apply. We'll see what happens. So as you can see, that hasn't worked. And the reason for that is this formula here. So as things are being applied to multiple rows, which you can see here, and multiple columns as well, what we actually need to make sure happens is that the cell in this column is being evaluated. But at the moment, it's only H2, but we also need to check H3, H4, H5, and so on. So the way to do that is to remove this $sign here, which is a type of reference which makes it fixed. So it's just going to only apply it to a H2. So if we remove that, it will always look at column H, but then it will check every row basically. And then now when we apply, it will actually highlight the row. So one thing that I've noticed about this as well, obviously I don't know exactly how they have this set up, but this probably isn't the best format of doing things, because you end up with potentially who knows how many weeks. Could be things going on for a year. I mean, end up with 52, and maybe even longer than that, and it would just get really messy, especially if you've got, for example, you've got one that lasts 52 weeks, but then you've got one like this which only lasts 3. It would get really hard to manage. You end up with a lot of scrolling and things like that. So I would actually do this slightly differently. And the way that's going to work would be you have a sheet where you enter the information, and then you have another sheet which acts as a summary. I'm just going to quickly put something together so I can show you. Okay, so I changed the structure slightly. So this is going to be the summary sheet, and I've introduced a reference column. And then what you do is you put in the value of the purchase order here, and then you only have one column which will just check the remaining. And what this is going to do is going to reference the other sheet, which is where you input all your information. So all you need here is just a purchase order reference, and then obviously the invoice amount, and then you might want to keep the date as well, just for accounting purposes. And then the way we're going to use this now is similar to what we had before, but the sum is going to be calculated slightly differently now. So it's going to be this minus the sum if, and then the range of this is going to be this value. The criteria is obviously going to then be the purchase order reference, and then the sum range is just going to be the invoice amount. And then as you can see, that pulls through the remaining amount here. And then we could just populate this down, and yeah, some of them aren't exactly the same. So let's just do that just for visual purposes. So now that comes up as 0, and then that's highlighted in green, and I need to change my conditional formatting because I added something. And I need to now make sure that it's applied to the entire table like that. And then another way to further improve this, because if you add new rows, this is now going to not work because they're fixed references. Highlight this section, press Ctrl-T, and then you'll get a little pop-up, and then it will just basically create a table for you. So now if you add in a new value, it will automatically create a new row. And then in here, we can change our references so that they match the new table reference, like that. And it just ensures that things are kept a little bit tidier. And it also makes sure that any data that you enter will definitely get picked up. And that's the way I would do it. Thanks, guys. I hope you've enjoyed watching that. It was a fun video. If you want to see more like this, make sure you subscribe. And again, if you want me to solve any specific problems, feel free to comment down below. And I'm also going to create a subreddit for people to submit queries to. So yeah, see you next time.